Jeffrey M. Green was born and raised in New York City and attended the Little Red Schoolhouse, a progressive school in Greenwich Village. He graduated from Princeton. Until 1979, he held various jobs, including a 3-year stint teaching in the English department at the Hebrew University, until he became a freelance translator from Hebrew and French. During his long career, he translated a dozen novels and many academic books published by major university presses. He has written 2 books in Hebrew, a book on translation published by the University of Georgia Press, as well as fiction, poetry, essays, and innumerable book reviews. He became obsessed with the subject of the present novel, the story of a man who was thought to have died in the attack of the World Trade Center, and worked on it for more than 10 years until he finally discovered the right way to tell that story. The book is finally out, and it is entitled Reboot. So let's welcome Jeffrey, who's right now connected with us. Hi, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation.
Okay, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
So let's talk about Reboot. We just gave a hint, but tell us more. What's the plot of this story?
The plot of the story is a man who has reached a point of total chaos in his personal life. He's been about to be fired from his job. He's about to have a very acrimonious divorce from his wife. And he is sleeping with his mistress and in Brooklyn. And suddenly they hear, instead of going to the office, and suddenly the attack on the World Trade Center happens. And he looks out the window and he sees the skyscraper being destroyed. And he knows he ought to have been there, but he was miraculously saved because of his delinquency. And afterwards, he asked the problem of rebuilding his life. It happens that because he, by almost a fluke, something he didn't even know, he was technically a Jewish person. So he was able to move to Israel without assuming a false identity or any help of any other kind. And once in Israel, he abandoned his American name and his American identity and took on an Israeli name. And he lived in Israel afterwards and tried to make a new life for himself over many years.
It's very interesting. We just said that you've had this idea for the plot for a very long time. Can you recall the very first time that you had this spark and when you actually started writing it?
No, I was fascinated by the idea and horrified by the idea that many, many people who were killed in the attack on the World Trade Center, their bodies were never recovered. There was no possibility of knowing whether they really died or didn't die. And I thought that it just occurred to me that there must be, I'm sure there really are, a bunch of people who were thought to have been in the World Trade Center and decided to exploit the can you call it opportunity, and to start a new life for themselves. And that idea sort of percolated in my mind, and I thought of trying to figure out what kind of a person this might have happened to. And then I invented a character and I invented a life for him, and it was over a number of years, and I can't remember exactly when I started thinking about it.
Then, when you started writing the book, it took 10 years to have this original manuscript finished. What was the most challenging part of the writing process?
First place, the hardest part was finding a way of presenting the character's story, who he might have been, and who. Just finding, and it took me a long time to find the narrative structure. In the beginning, I had sections by him and sections by his divorced wife and sections by other people, and I realized that wasn't working. And I kept giving up. It didn't take me 10 years of writing every day or something like that. It took me 10 years. I would write for a while and then give up because it wasn't working at all and put it aside. And then I kept saying to myself, well, you really have invested quite a bit in writing this. Why don't you try and fix it up and get there, finish it. So, finally, I came upon a structure that seemed to me to be one that worked. And that's the structure it's now presented as him writing or talking to an unknown person who I won't just say who this person is, because that would spoil the book. And he is explaining himself to that person.
And now that the book is finally published, what was your sensation when you first saw it?
I was very pleased, but I also was troubled. I don't know how many copies will eventually. I have given a lot of copies to friends of mine and to people whom I want as readers, and I've received a very favorable response from my friends. I guess if they weren't my friends, they wouldn't say bad things about the book. And then, and I'm hoping that somehow or other people will hear about the book and buy it themselves, and even people that I don't know.
Well, finally, the book is out after all of this effort that you made. So we wish you best luck with the book, and thank you again for your time today.
Okay, my pleasure. I'm glad to speak to you. Thank you. Bye.
By an ironic twist of fate, Frank Oliviero, an unfaithful husband and a shady jewel dealer, isn't in his office, where he was supposed to be, in the World Trade Center when the Twin Towers are destroyed. Impulsively, rather than face a messy divorce and financial and legal complications, he decides to remain officially dead and start his life over again from zero. Reboot by Jeffrey M. Green is now available in bookstores and digital platforms. It's a publication by Eurobooks.